Yo guys, I'm HP, this is Dr. Pink. Today's topic is guitar secrets, emotional tone, Gary Moore vibe. This is going to be fun. If you love Gary Moore, you probably will love this tutorial. I'll show you what we're going to talk about first. I'm going to give you a few examples. And so on. So we want to figure out what is the secret behind this kind of emotional expression. Well, of course, when we come to Gary Moore, he had a few really fast runs, but we don't want to focus on the runs. We want to focus on the tone creation and the tricks behind it, how this works to get this maximum emotional output, emotional tone from your lead guitar. So then the first thing we need to figure out what kind of sound will we select. I've taken a quite classic Gary Moore sound. Well, not completely classic. He used to use Marshall amps. I'm using a Mesa Boogie here with distortion level like on 7 or 8. And just a spring reverb, and that's it. No additional effects for the moment, because that comes closest to the style and vibe of Gary Moore, but also closest to where you really dig into creating the tone on the guitar. I mean, you can add a lot of other effects if you want, but in fact the tone is created on the fretboard, so you have to figure it out with a really puristic sound setting, which would be something like this. Figure out how your guitar sounds with the two pickup positions. Bridge pickup, neck pickup, here bridge pickup, neck pickup. First just figure out how it sounds to you and how the tone reacts. You know, when you go on the bridge pickup, of course, you play more in the lower position. Why? Because otherwise it gets muddy when you go to the neck pickup. See what I mean? We want to have this crunch and really transparent sound in the lower positions, and then in the higher positions we want to have maximum fatness, or if you want maximum brightness. If you want brightness, you go on the bridge pickup. If you want this creamy sound, both works of course, but you have to figure out yourself what is your preferred sound and start working with that. So these are the requirements, how you start to prepare to get into this world of creating tones and getting the maximum expression out of it, because the very first thing which comes is what is exactly created here through your guitar setting. And take your setting, your favorite setting, and start to experiment, and then stay on one setting, and then you work on the playing technique, because the playing technique will bring additional colors, dark blue, to your playing. But if you always change the sound settings, then you don't get to the core of how you create this emotional sound on your guitar. When you figure out Gary Moore, by the way, I've seen a few interviews with him. He just plays a little Marshall amp or so with nothing, and he sounds absolutely great. And that's what we want to achieve. Have the minimum sound setting and just try to sound as great as possible. So, then the next thing is you figure out the techniques which are used to create this maximum emotional expression. One is, did you hear it? It's putting a dynamic shift on each note you're playing. So in this case, I'm playing the classic opening phrase. And then on the end note, I start to accelerate the vibrato. And figure out your technique, how you want to get to this tone, there are different ways to create this tone. Therefore, we are going to disclose you now. By the way, the backing track is Old Love by Eric Clapton. I produced a version of it which works really nice, and it's really great to practice with it. And it will be available in the HPCrazy Guitar Academy if you want to download it there, or you can use any other track. So now, how do you create this accelerating vibrato? There are several ways to do a vibrato. So if you use the ring finger, I always teach my students that wherever you do the vibrato, if you have some spare fingers, they shall help you to control the tone. So they stay behind in a loose position. And now, if I want to make it dramatic, then probably you make it out of your fingers. See, this way you can make it dramatic, but you can also make it smooth. And there you have a different position. So these are all things you need to figure out. For the same note, we have different ways of emotional expressions. And the way you shape your tone and you shape your vibrato defines your emotional expression. That's the key to everything. If you add some effects, if you want, let me quickly add a delay. Then you can see what will happen. A delay is basically a multiplier of what you're doing on the fret button. It just multiplies what you did here. So if the core, what you create here, is not good, then the delay will multiply, I cannot say now, what you just played. So the thing is just really work with minimum sound settings. And the bending tricks of Gary Moore were really famous. Also reverse bending, you know. Something like this. You go into bending, but then you make, and to make this crying tone, there's a trick. When you want to make pinch harmonics on the top string, on the high E string, if you go upwards, then I use the back part of the pick and just pull the pick like this. But the opposite, then I use the other way. And I'm not playing really much now. Let's see how that works with the backing track. So with the vibrato, you define the emotional expression. You can make it smooth, you can make it crying, you can make it aggressive. However, that's your voice, so you really need to spend a lot of time to figure out how you want to create your tone and your vibrato, how you want to control it. I always say to my students, I mean, there's some guys that make vibrators like, if it's that what you want, it's cool, but it's better if you have several ways of expression, because then you can express more widely. But if you only want to have one, that's also cool. It's not a rule to have several vibrators. I'm going to show you some tricks, okay? Now we want to give it an extra one. We're going to, when you compare this bending here with this one here, the same note, but there's a difference. Do you notice? The B string sounds fatter and more emotional. So if I have a more crying vibrato, then you take the bending, then you take the upper position. Okay, let's do that. I exaggerated a little bit now, but that's also very important that you find the balance between no effect at all and maximum effect. I did the maximum effect now. And what is also a very common trick, which also Gary Moore did a lot, the power of 3. So if you make a bending, you build it up with playing it 3 times and building up the vibrato in the bending. And then get out of it. And you also check out which pickup setting works best for you. Really depends. This one is more, I would say, more moaning. And this one is more an aggressive emotional impact. However, make emotional connections with what you play, what you hear. Work with your ears, listen. And what is also a good trick when you make it super dramatic, what I often do, is when let's say we switch from this bending to this one. Or I just make a strike in the open strings and then jump into the bending. You probably think it sounds terrible, but when you listen in the music, you don't recognize that there were basically wrong notes. See? Well, honestly, there are no wrong notes in music. There's only wrong emotions. If you play without emotions, then I want to consider whatever you play, even if it's correct, as wrong notes, because you don't mean them. It's about getting a meaning in what you play. That's the core of any music, at least any music which used to be nice, that you really mean what you're doing here on the fretboard. It doesn't have to be fast, but the key is that you really mean it, so you need to figure out the techniques how to do that. Also figure out the high bending. This one here, of course, in the 50. And also here in the, oh God, in the 18th. Or, wait, 15, 17, 20th. And each of the bendings has a different technical difficulty. For me, I have quite big hands. It's nearly impossible for me to play in the high positions. So I needed to figure out how I can put my fingers here that I still can control the tone. It's all about tone control. So up here, I don't play with the pinky anymore, as an example. And also here, and when you go in the high positions, the vibrato has to be more intense to get more, because the high positions are the maximum of intensity. Then you have you really multitask the guitar, and then we're on the right path to go. So let's do this now. See, it's not so hard. I mean, from the material there, it's just playing pentatonic position 1, going position 2, going position 4, doing the major bendings, and that's it. But it's the way you control the tone. And then you already covered 90% of the emotional perception of what you're doing here on the guitar. Now once you achieve this, then you're allowed to put in a multiplier. I'm going to switch on the delay now. Then we're going to see how it sounds. Then it just multiplies what you already could do without the delay. As you can hear, here we have a delay. Let's do it. See, then you get even more emotional expression. Yo guys, that was Guitar Secrets emotional expression with the Gary Moore vibe. One thing to, I need to mention, you need to have your things a little bit together that you really can have the maximum control over the tone. And one trick which always helps me is I'm not afraid of a mishit. You know, if you make you know that you don't really hit the note exactly precise. Why? Because what I'm afraid of more is to not have the emotional expression what I'm going for. So it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, from the technical part or hitting the note on a clinical clean way. It's more about hitting the note in the moment with your emotions, and if you have a mishit, then it's perfect because it's part of your personal process. That's a very, very important insight or trick or psychological trick or philosophy, whatever you want, and it works. Because in music, we can discuss over hours what is perfection in music. From my point of view, it's only my point of view, I'm just a guitar player from Switzerland. It's to have that your emotions go on your guitar and get transported outside. That's perfection. If you can transport what you want exactly the way it should sound. And if it means that you play fast runs, I'm cool with that. Me personally, I'm not really somebody who always wanted to, you know, shredding is cool, but for me it never really worked out. I was always focused on getting the maximum tone. And of course you have runs in between, which is cool, but when you record it, what is really touching is the one note you hit perfect and not the one run where you hit 30 notes in a millisecond, you know what I mean? But that's just my point of view. Yo, however, if you want to work with this backing track and everything was too fast for you, I'm gonna write you an example as tabs, what I just now did, that you get an idea. And you can also download this backing track in the HPCrazy Guitar Academy. Please join there. Please join there anyway in order to support the work which me and Dr. Pink are doing for the entire global guitar community. We're probably not the largest community, but probably the coolest and the most emotional ones. That is something. Yo, if you love my channel, subscribe to my channel, blah, 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 blah. See you guys.